Now is New York Magazine's Jonathan Chait and political editor and White House correspondent at the Huffington Post, Sam Stein. Jonathan, at this point, I think they just need to say, Benghazi, Hillary Clinton, Benghazi, Hillary Clinton, keep saying that like for the next 2 years, and maybe the strategy will all work out.
Can they keep it going? I didn't think they'd keep it going this long, but
they did.
Yeah.
What strikes me, you wrote today, John Boehner, let's talk about the Select Committee, because this seems to be like the most exciting thing that's happened in conservative circles, possibly in years, that Boehner decided to let his freak flag fly and authorize this Select Committee on Benghazi. No less than Michelle Bachmann has expressed her joy at this, saying it's long overdue. Americans deserve the truth, because apparently the nearly 50 hearings and millions of dollars we've spent on this covered yet the truth.
Right, that's the place that this is occupied in the discourse. It's like one notch more respectable than birtherism. It's been like the Michelle Bachmanns of the world, who are a little bit too embarrassed to be birthers, but not quite embarrassed enough to be this. This is what they were into, the Select Committee. And John Boehner has held off for more than a year, because he knew that it would be freak time, 24/7. Once you let this Select Committee get started, we'll have all these different committees. But now it's like he can't hold back the tide anymore. So on with the show.
And it's all, Sam, because of an email from Ben Rhodes that outlines, among other things, that the administration would like to convey that the U.S. is doing everything that we can to protect our people and families. That abroad. That is the first point on this much maligned email. The second, to underscore that these protests are rooted in an internet video and not a broader failure of policy, something the CIA initially suggested, and to show that the administration will be resolute in bringing people who harm Americans to justice. The thing about the thing is, there's nothing there. It's the same information. It's just indignation over the fact that that information had not earlier been released.
My position on this has been basically that there are three tenets of the Benghazi controversy. One is, did the administration cover something up? The second is, what happened with our intelligence that night? Why couldn't we determine in advance that it was going to happen? And the third is, have we made the changes to embassy and outpost security that make sure that this doesn't happen again? And of those three, I think the manipulation of the talking points is sort of the least significant in terms of real-world impact. And yet that has gotten 95% of the focus in this entire controversy. Did the political office, the communications office of the White House, manipulate these talking points to benefit the president's re-election campaign? It is such a misplaced priority when it comes to real-world impact. The Republican Party could be holding hearings on what the status of embassy security is, but we don't hear about it. It's not sexy. And I will say this, the timing of the Select Committee...
It's not sexy, Sam. It does not further advance Republican candidates in the 2016 and 2016
And that was my
elections.
last point, which is that the timing of this is a little bit suspicious in that Obamacare is sort of seeding as an issue for political use at this juncture. It's still going to be used, don't get me wrong. But it does seem a little convenient and maybe coincidental, I don't know, that this pops up at this moment in time.
Right, and that's a point that Dave Weigel made, that the ACA numbers, 8 million people enrolled, looks like it's actually not like the apocalypse that Republicans had predicted would be. So nature, or as my colleague Chris Hayes said, like the Republican Party abhors a vacuum. And so what to fill that with? Benghazi.
You need something. And look, there's always something that the most fervent, passionate people in one party are always convinced is the scandal is going to bring down the president. During the Bush years, there's always something that people on the left were saying, why aren't you covering this? This is going to destroy the Bush administration. But they never really got members of Congress to hold hearings on these various conspiracy theories. Mostly they were just dismissed. This one has actually made it all the way to the top.
Sam, there are many reasons, I think, for people who are perhaps nonpartisan or looking at this through a reasonable lens to be indignant. And one thing that doesn't get discussed is, the things that our Secretary of State should perhaps be focusing on instead of Benghazi. I mean, we have an international crisis blooming we have many international crises blooming. I mean, there is horrible stuff happening in Syria. There is a nuclear package that we're trying to put together with Iran. And of course, there is Ukraine. Now, it is comedic that Darrell Issa has called John Kerry to the Hill to testify and waved his figure, saying that it is not a game. The Secretary of State will be abroad conducting foreign business, something he should be doing. But they will make this into a sort of political witch hunt and ask why the Secretary of State isn't there, when of course he should be tending to more important matters.
Yeah, and more than one Democrat has pointed out to me today that back in 2007, when Democrats in the House were trying to get Condoleezza Rice, then Secretary of State, to come back and testify about the failures in the lead up to the Iraq War, that none other than Darrell Issa and now Speaker John Boehner were warning that she had bigger things going on, that she shouldn't have to be hauled back in front of Congress, that this was a distraction from much more weighty international issues. So there is a bit of irony there, and I get your point. You know, it's a circus, and I do think that it's worthwhile to continue to produce documents in some respects, but again, I go back to my original focus, which is that there are two major components that have real-world implications, and we're not talking about either of them.
I will actually read Issa's quote from 2007, Jonathan, when he said, "The inappropriateness of hauling the Secretary of State out of the performance of her job is what we are objecting to." I think that's not even a bit of irony. I think that is like a 17-layer cake of irony.
It is, but these are always things that the parties always switch sides on, right? When your party's in the president,
exactly.
People are way too important. They can't testify about anything.
But do you think there was an analog on the left for Darrell Issa? I mean, this man has, like, we were going to make T-shirts that said Lois Lerner's emails, because this man has been so singularly fixated on a sort of mid-level IRS employee, and in the process has wasted, again, millions of taxpayer dollars, tens of thousands of man-hours, and made the job of the IRS that much more difficult.
There are people like Darrell Issa on the left, but most of them are walking around with sandwich boards around university campuses. They're not heading major committees.
They have tinfoil hats.
But on the taxpayer dollars, look, I mean, you know, they've got enough money in Congress, and it keeps them off the streets. It keeps them from throwing reporters off balconies and doing other things they might otherwise be engaged in. So, you know.
Can I make the point? I want to make the point that, like Jonathan says, investigations are important. And, you know, I was grateful in some respects that these committees looked into such things as the IRS scandal and, for instance, Benghazi, and they produced a lot of information. The key question is, at what point do the investigations become excessive? I, for one, like information. I want to see all the stuff out there. It's part of my profession. But there is a point to be made that there is overkill. And I would say that the point is, when are you wasting your time on past things versus how much are you building on constructive policies going forward? And not to beat a dead horse, but you could be looking into embassy security and what we need to do there.
And in the same point, Sam, I mean, I think the issue that we're taking is not just that they're having hearings or investigating things, which I think oversight is a good thing. But what have we learned from the IRS? We've learned that our 501c4 designations is an entirely flawed process. That
That's
there's
an
very
important
little
thing to
oversight
learn.
and review, and there's been no reform. It has literally been a witch hunt for the sake of a witch hunt. I mean, as yet, I have yet to see one piece of reform that Darrell Issa's investigations have brought to light or instituted.
That's a good point. And listen, the 501c4 thing is a great thing that we needed to learn, that there need to be a spotlight on. Your point is that they need to act on those things, and they haven't yet, and I agree with that.
Benghazi, 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 Hillary Clinton. Okay, I'm just telling you guys, that's what we're going to be hearing for quite some time. Jonathan Chait, it is great to see you in person. Oh, a handshake.
Wow.
I really like that.
I'm jealous.
I don't know what that was. Sam, you can join us on set next time. It's always great to see you, my friend. Thanks for your time.